My full name is Avram Yehuda or Abram Judah Samet. I was born in Debrecen, Hungary, which was at the time the second largest city in Hungary, about 173,000 people, and there were about 7,300 Jews living in Debrecen. My parents were Orthodox Jews. My mother was entrepreneurial, and she started our factories. We had 2 knitting factories. She could do anything with her hands. But my father was a Talmudic genius. In the seminary, where they had there, I think, about 500, 600, 700 students, he was the top student. So he learned very fast. And he ran the factories. So we prospered. We did very well. You know, when I say we prospered, I want to explain to people, you know, as Orthodox Jews, after work, when he came home, after we ate, he would go to the synagogue and study. That was the biggest joy for Orthodox Jews. My father, on the way home from work in the evening, he was attacked by a gang, and they were drunk. And one of them was actually one of his workers. So next day he went to the Dutch embassy or consulate, and he got us tickets to come to America. We had family in New York. We had quite a few family members, but unfortunately they beat us by 2 days. The Germans came lunchtime, because lunchtime, 12 o'clock, was the main meal of the day, the meat and potatoes. And they knew that every Jew is going to be home and they won't have to hunt them down throughout the city. They gave us 15 minutes to be outside, and they probably checked the houses. And then there were about 30 or 40 soldiers. Also some Hungarian police, but they were very anti-Semitic. So they made us march. We were marching to the brickyard, which was right next to the railroad. And as we were marching, you had 7,300 from Debrecen. You had about another 6,000, maybe a little more, from the surrounding area, the small towns and villages. The old ones, they couldn't walk fast enough. If you didn't walk fast enough, you were clubbed. You didn't see them dying, falling down, because we were going fast. But they were killing anybody who didn't walk. The little ones were carried. We were too young. I was 6 years, but that was when I became a man. I never had a childhood. In the brickyard, my mother was an activist. First of all, she spoke fluent German. How does a Hasidic girl learn fluent German? Because she was not happy with the fact that women were not supposed to be educated. My mother volunteered to cook 12,000 people. Of course, there was a whole cadre of women who volunteered to help her. She was given, I think, 2 bathtubs, and she made 4 bathtubs of soup every day. They got the stuff from the farmers. We paid for it. We didn't get anything for nothing. But she cooked, my mother. So we were there, I don't know, for maybe 2-3 weeks before the first train arrived. My aunt, she had 7 children, but the oldest one was old enough to go to a labor camp. So he and his father were taken to a labor camp. I think her name was Berta, with their 6 kids. Started to walk towards the train, and my mother begged her, "We know where we are going. They're taking us to Auschwitz to kill us." She said she couldn't take the crying of her children, starting from about 3, 4, up to maybe 11, 12. What do kids do when they get only 1 slice of bread and 1 cup of soup? But that's all we got for 24 hours. So they were crying and screaming. She couldn't take it anymore. She got on the train, we never saw them again. And in Hungary, they were the kids we played with, our cousins. So we lost our entire family. They moved us all to the platform by the train. My mother always stood next to the commandant because she spoke fluent German. My mother committed a cardinal crime. She addressed the commandant. Hitler gave specific orders. A Jew opens his mouth, you shoot him on the spot. No questions asked. The only way they can talk is if you ask them a question. They may answer the question. She said to the commandant, the people on the way to Auschwitz, they were wondering, what happened to the German people? They were the flower of the Western world. They were number 1 in everything. 1933, when Hitler became chancellor, they got half of the Nobel Prizes. What happened to the Germans? How do you go from all the way up there to lower the Dante's Inferno? So the Gestapo sergeant, he was SS, pulled out his pistol and he put it to my mother's head. And I'm standing right there. Now the commandant didn't even look. He knew what happened, and he just said, "You Dummkopf, you idiot," in German. "Can't you see, if you kill her, we have nobody to talk to? We won't be able to converse with anybody here." So he put his thing back, his gun back. So that was a miracle. But my mother had, people might say, well, was she suicidal? She knew the law. No. She was strategic. She knew that if we made it to Auschwitz, then within 50 minutes we would be all coming out of the smokestacks, women and children. In Austria, we were divided and we ended up in this big lumber yard owned by an Austrian major Nazi. Opened his shirt always, he had a swastika tattooed on his front. Every time he went by the Jews, by us, he opened his shirt to taunt us. The food was the same, 1 slice of bread. Of course, they had French prisoners of war. They lived by the Geneva Code, so they got different food. But there, they worked, my father and my mother, between 12 and 14 hours a day. After work, my mother would sneak into a nearby village, and she would bargain with the mothers of little babies. She said, "I'm going to need clothes for your babies. All you need is get a needle and yarn. And in return, give me a little bit bread, a little milk, a little cheese, some eggs. Not too much, because they were under threat too. If Hitler found out the Germans dealt with Jews, they would kill them too." She would bring back to where we stayed, and one day she didn't come back after work. And we got very worried. It took about 2 days. We were sure that she got killed. They caught her. She was dealing with the Austrians. We were worried sick. So she was able to negotiate. She managed to save her brother's life, who was old enough to go to labor camp. She convinced the Germans, the Nazis, that she's busy with a sickly husband and 4 little children. She doesn't have time for her parents. She needs a brother. And he stayed with us. She saved his life, actually, because she went to labor camp. The likelihood that you survive, they worked 14 hours a day, 1 slice of bread, hard labor. There were a few that survived, but not too many. She came back. A few days later, a train came. I was on 3 death trains. The first to Auschwitz, second to Bergen-Belsen, because that was a death camp, and third, we didn't know where. We knew that they want to take us someplace where they can kill us. So the train came. I don't know how long we had to travel. We ended up in Bergen-Belsen. The first thing we saw a pile of corpses by the gate. Had to be about 2 stories high. I figure between $800 and $1,200 every day. During the day, they took them all. We had a crematoria, they burned them. Next morning you woke up, they woke us up at 4 o'clock in the morning to see how many of us are still alive, counting us. People were dropping every day, just dying. They were starved, and they figured, tomorrow is going to be the same, next day is going to be the same, so why suffer? They killed themselves. Some threw themselves on the electric thing. I was always outside. My mother couldn't keep me inside. She kept my 2 brothers and my sister inside. And in Bergen-Belsen, the situation was very bad. The typhoid was killing many, many people, and so this dysentery. There was not enough food. People were so hungry that noontime when they got that 1 slice of bread and soup, they ate the whole thing. They had no stomach to process it. They died. And if they didn't die right away, eventually they would die. It came to a point where that little friend that I had, we were always looking for something to eat. We used to go around the dead out of respect. They came to a point that we were weakened, so we just stepped on them, and we could hear the bones cracking. And as a kid, it just became normal. My mother did all the worrying. She took care of us. There was not a time in my life that I didn't feel that love arrows hitting my back. That was unbelievable. And my mother never ordered us to do anything. She always reasoned with us. The best way to survive is eat the lice. It's going to help you survive. He said lice are they're predators. They're bloodsuckers. You eat the lice, you take in all that blood, and blood is protein. So the first 2-3 days it was tough, but then we got used to it. And God knows there were so many, there was no problem, So we were eating the lice. So she always looked for ways to help us survive. We were saved because of my mother's intuition, thank God. She puts us on the train. It was a miracle. And I asked her, Ema, mother, why did you put us on the train? You knew it's a death train. It says, well, I had a choice between 2. If we stayed in Bergen-Belsen, we would be all dead in 2 days because the infrastructure broke down. No water, no food. But on the train, maybe something's going to happen again, like the first train. So the train was very close to a city, not a big city, Hillersleben on the Rhine. And at first, in the train, all of a sudden was very quiet. Not only the soldiers disappeared, but after the soldiers, they were replaced with the Hitler Jugend, young Germans between 12 and 15 who became soldiers. Hitler loved them, because they were more dedicated than anybody else. And they were killers. They killed. So this disappeared too. And all of a sudden we heard this big rumble. They opened the doors, and sure enough, a tank was coming out from the woods. And we thought, this is it. That's where they're going to finish us off. The turret opened, and a soldier picked out, and he didn't have the uniform of German, Nazi. And my father was learning English already for 3 months, preparing, yelled Americans. And everybody came out, they were singing and laughing, and God knows. And the only thing that impressed me is the first time I saw a smile on my mother's face. We were saved. We went back, got on the train, and we went for about an hour and a half to Hillersleben. And we noticed that the Rhine there was very broad, and there was a bridge, but the bridge was bombed out. So we thought maybe this was the place where they would close the doors and push the train into the Rhine. And there was no way out. And so we were there. That's where my father died, and from there they separated us from my mother and my family, the 4 of us, and they took us to Paris. They put us in a very, very nice, fancy hotel, 5-star. Our picture was taken by all the major media, no TVs, nothing like, but newspapers, Le Figaro and the other ones, all the big ones. On the front page, on the very top, they put my picture a little below. We were the first children saved by the Americans. After a few weeks, they moved us to Orly, into it's like a sanatorium, you know. It's a small hotel where they fattened us up. That's where we met my mother and my uncle and my grandparents. We were all back together.
All city units are being sent to an active shooter.
9:54 a.m. Saturday morning, tragedy strikes as a morning of prayer quickly shifts to a morning of deadly chaos. In under a minute, police rushing to the scene of an active shooter at the Tree of Life synagogue in Pittsburgh early Saturday morning.
Usually, I would be there 5 minutes, even 10 minutes before. But my housekeeper, who normally comes when I'm already in the synagogue, she came at 9 o'clock, and she wanted to tell me something. And I said, Patty, I gotta go to shul. I'm already late. I gotta go. So I arrived there 4 minutes late. It was very, very quiet. I parked in the handicap. All of a sudden, somebody came to my passenger window, and very lightly, you could barely hear. I looked, it went like that. He says, turn. So I turned my window down. He says to me, there is a shooting inside your synagogue. You better turn around and go home.
7-1, contact, shot fired.
And sure enough, it was about 2 feet from me, the detective behind the wall there. And he had a pistol. So he shot 3 and he hid. And Robert Barr, had a submachine gun. And his was, he shot 3 times 5. I was able to count it.
We approached the front of the synagogue and began firing at us.
According to the FBI, Bowers hurled words of hate against Jews as he murdered them. What came next? An all-out gun battle. Bowers shot, wounded, and crawling on his knees, he then surrenders.
Suspects talking about all these Jews need to die. We're still communicating with them.
You know, we have people here from all over the world. The likelihood that everybody's going to like everybody. In fact, I'm afraid that we are coming pretty close to a civil war in this country. How long are the white supremacists keep quiet, seeing what's going on around? That's a language. And language is very dangerous. When I speak to a class, they want it more. I want to tell it to them, because they should know. Well, they see the craziness going on in this country right now. It could happen here very easily. It's happening against Asians already. They should know. And they should know from somebody who was there. And asked me, well, can you forgive the German? I said, that I cannot do. Because if I forgive, I become the voice of 6 million. You want a forgiveness? You got to go to those people, every one of them, and ask forgiveness.